Hello and welcome to episode 14 of the Not Yet Adults podcast. I, of course, am one of your hosts, Collin Geffrey, joined by the one and only, Eric Zayas.
It can't be that way every time. We've already established I'm not the one and only Eric Zayas. There's it's a common name.
Eric Zayas, let me tell you something. All these kids at home looking at what we do, saying, "Man, it's the greatest podcast out there. They put so much work into it. How do you do a podcast that good?" The answer is repetition. All you have to do is keep repeating the same things, the same segments, the same nicknames, and eventually it just becomes a thing. So I'm just gonna call you the one and only, as many times as it takes.
I also really like how you say hello and welcome. It's very like NPR show-esque. And I don't even listen to NPR.
There's just been it's not a call out. I guess it's an intro. That's just how I've introed videos for as long as I can remember. Just hello and welcome.
It's your signature.
Yeah, a lot of people do what's up, everybody.
I need a signature.
Good morning. I don't know. Do the gosh darn it, what is it? Good Morning Vietnam with Robin Williams.
Oh yeah, that classic. R.I.P. Way to bring it down.
Never forget. Sorry. Rest in peace, Robin Williams. Speaking of Robin Williams, no, I don't have a segue out of that. Eric, what the heck are we talking about today? It's not Robin Williams. I know that.
Yeah. Today I thought we'd talk about sports, because the first Seahawks season game happened last Sunday. The Seattle Seahawks played against the Denver Broncos. Yeah, I watched it with friends and family, my girlfriend and my parents. And it was a good game. The Seahawks unfortunately lost. I can't remember the final score, but it was close. It was like 3 points. So just a field goal's worth of points difference.
No, just because I am not literate with sports, you have the touchdown, which is 6 points, right? And then you get like an extra point if you get a thing.
If they kick the ball successfully into the, I think it's called the field. I don't actually know the terminology myself, but it's the big fort. We're gonna have a great sports episode.
It's gonna be great. We have no idea what we're talking about. This one jock who we knew at PLU is gonna be listening. He's like, "God, I hate these scores."
Yeah. So touchdown, 6 points. Then there's the chance for an extra point. There's also a field goal, which is where if you don't make it to the end zone, like if you you have like 4 attempts to make a 10 yards of distance. And if you don't make those yards within the first 3 attempts, what they call the fourth down, if you're close enough to the field goal, you can kick it in and get 3 points. But if you're really far away, you just have to kick it to the other team and then they get the ball.
And also, if you catch the golden snitch, that's 150 points.
And then you get a home run.
1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out.
One real aside to this, I have to say, is my mom over the years has become a real big Seahawks fan, and which I feel like everyone in Washington and around the country did when they were doing really well a couple years ago, and now not so much. But she learned a lot about football because she watched it religiously, more so than I do. And I just remember one of the first games she watched, one of the first times she started getting excited about the game, but still didn't really know about the rules and whatnot. The Seahawks scored a touchdown, and she unironically yelled, "Home run!"
Heck yeah, man.
Because she genuinely thought that was what it's called, and I still remember that fondly. And now she knows the sports, but yeah.
It's like the guy at the Super Bowl party who's like, "Yeah, sports ball, here we go." It's like, come on, man. What do you have to prove? So do you feel like that your mom kind of being really enthusiastic and starting to take an interest in the Seahawks especially, do you feel like that kind of sparked an interest in you? Because I don't mean this in a bad way, but you don't strike me as the kind of guy who would really be into football.
Oh, I'm definitely not an athletic guy at all. I don't really follow any kind of sports. The only reason I follow football, one part of it is that the team that happens to live in the same state I lived was really popular for a while, and I would never really call myself a 12th fan. I never really jumped on that bandwagon, but it was neat to be a part of a community where the team is really popular. And it's there's a whole fan energy around this thing that got me more excited about it. Although at times it was a little much, but still it was always fun. But also because when I was a kid, the reason I am able to follow football more than I can follow basketball or baseball or any other kind of sport is because I played Madden a little bit as a kid. To me, it was just a video game that I knew it was a real life sport, but I never followed it anywhere beyond that. And so as a kid, I'd play it with friends, and I'd always get my butt whooped in the games. But it was still a fun. I associate playing that game with the camaraderie of friendship, and I learned the rules that way, and I learned some of the strategies. And then as an adult, I can watch it because I get this sort of, it's almost like a nostalgia fix, but not because I watched football as a kid, but because I played a football video game as a kid.
I remember one time in elementary school, I was about to ride the bus home for the day, and this buddy of mine came over. His name was Eli, awesome guy. And he said that, like...
Was his last name Manning?
No, but I do know Eli Manning. No,
Do you have
I
his...
don't. I'm just kidding.
Oh.
That's no. Of course. Why in the heck would I know Eli Manning? What?
I was about to be like, do you have his like personal number? You text him every now and then?
Yeah, you want to prank call Eli Manning live on the air?
Oh my god, that'd be so funny.
No, but anyway, so Eli comes over and he's like, "Hey, your mom called my mom and told you to come home with me." And I was like, okay, lots of red flags going off here. This is very strange. I've never been over to Eli's house. I don't know his mom. This is very odd. It was all legit. It actually happened exactly the way he said it did. And I went over to his house and hung out for a few hours and then went home. But he only had one video game, and that was whatever Madden had come out that year. And so we were playing Madden, and I sort of had fun with it. I mean, like, I'm like a video game guy, so like I pick up on things pretty quickly, a little quicker than the average bear when it comes to video games. And I was like, oh yeah, that was fun. I had a good time. And then he had his two other friends stop by from across the street, and then we went out and played real football in real life.
Oh god.
And I was like, this is not nearly as fun as Madden. I don't like this. This is not cool. And I think that was the last time I played football ever. But yeah, sports are kind of a central pastime, especially here in, I mean, obviously everywhere in the world, but here in America in particular. I feel like there's definitely this whole culture around it. People get very, very passionate about sports, and I think football in particular, especially when their team is, in the running for the Super Bowl or the playoffs or anything like that. What is, Eric, your history with sports personally? Kind of as a kid or as an adolescent, did you play on any teams? Was there any sports you were good at?
My history with participating in sports begins and ends with t-ball. I don't know if you could even say I was really part of a team, but I was in a t-ball team in, I believe it was kindergarten, first grade, probably kindergarten. And t-ball, for those unfamiliar, is the baby version of baseball, where the players out in the field stand a lot closer than they typically do in standard baseball. And the baseball itself, instead of being thrown to you from the pitcher, it's propped up on this tee. It's a plastic stick with a stand at the bottom, like basically think a microphone stand, except at the top, instead of a microphone, it's the ball, and it's larger than normal baseball. It's like a softball. And so we as kids had these plastic bats, and all we had to do was stand and hit the ball that's right in front of us, like very easily within our reach. If you can't hit that thing that's right in front of you 3 times in a row, then you're out. And then it's someone else's turn. And I could not hit that thing to save my life.
As the old song goes, 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out.
Absolutely. And that was basically my anthem while playing this ball. I was like, oh, I guess that's the whole song for my part. Yeah, I would like be scared of it, and I would swing with my eyes closed and then miss it. And I felt like when I closed my eyes, it like disappeared.
That was the hurdle, no pun intended, that I could never overcome with sports, was getting hit by the ball. And that's why baseball I never took a liking to. Soccer especially, I was always afraid I was going to hit me in the face, the soccer ball. I was just like, I don't like things being thrown at me at high velocities or being kicked at me at high velocities. This is just scary. This is a recipe for disaster. This isn't going to end well, you know?
Yeah, it's also part of why I don't really participate in many sports nowadays, because there were a few times during my limited time with sports like t-ball, and I also played a little bit of football in Boys and Girls Club as a young lad, probably 2nd or 3rd grade. I would get hit in the face with the ball, and I'd be out, and I'd be like, I don't see the point of this. I'm completely done. It happened a couple times.
Did you ever have those other kids on your team who were like really competitive about it? And they're like, come on, Zayas, what are you doing? Focus up. We got to win this thing.
Probably. I don't really remember the other kids as much as I remember my own actions in the game, and how, like, because I had pretty bad ADD as a kid, so it would be hard for me to pay attention to anything. And so when I remember specifically, it's kind of funny to think of it now, but at the time it was probably really frustrating for my parents and for the coach and for the other players. When I was at one of the plates, I would get so bored standing around that I would just sit and play with the grass and let other kids run past me. And that's definitely not where you're supposed to be. And there's like my parents yelling at me, the coach yelling at me, everybody looking at me weird. I'm just like, oh, I'm in my own world. I'm in my own game. That's imagination.
The greatest game of all, some might say. The greatest game ever played. I mean, like, what do you want to do? You're a kid there. You're trying something new because your parents are forcing you to. You find out you don't like it. I mean, what do they really want you to do?
Yeah, it's also the lowest stakes time to do it. Like, if you're going to suck at a sport, like, fully, that's when you do it. Yeah. Do you have any experience with t-ball or baseball or any kind of sports?
Not so much t-ball. I would play not real baseball, but like I do miss this a little bit. It's sort of like as a kid, sort of like block party kind of stuff, where like once a week all the kids in the neighborhood would get together on the cul-de-sac and just play like a friendly game of baseball. And like not regulation size, no one was taking it seriously, no one wore mitts or anything. It was just like a kind of a fun little thing that all the kids would do.
Colin, were you in the Sandlot?
I was in the Sandlot. I was there when they filmed the movie.
Were you killing Smalls?
I did kill Smalls, but we don't talk about that because I'm still wanted. I don't know. I haven't seen the Sandlot, full disclosure. So
yeah, I saw it a while ago and I misremember it, and I think I butchered the quote.
You're killing me, Smalls, I think is the quote, right? You're killing me, Smalls. Anyway, yeah. So I would play sort of the block baseball with the kids in my neighborhood, and I could always hit the ball actually pretty well. And obviously, I mean, they're not giving you like difficult pitches when you're a 4 or 5 year old kid. But I remember people were always surprised at how well I could hit it. And then switch over to pitching, and I couldn't throw it to save my life. It was like I'd maybe get it half the way to whatever I was throwing it at, regardless of the distance. And I was just like, this is not fun for me. But yeah, that's pretty much the extent of baseball growing up. Kind of on the fringe of sports. I don't even know if you could really call this a sport, but I did karate for probably 9-10 years, quite a while. I technically got my black belt, but it was sort of this, I don't really know how to explain it. Basically, it was this karate program that was very, very geared towards kids. And like in their curriculum, you'd get your black belt at like 10 or 11. And anyone who knows anything about karate knows that you can't really get a black belt by 10 or 11, at least not one that means anything.
You can at least tell people like, hey, I'm a black belt in karate. And you're technically correct.
Oh, yeah. And I have avoided many muggings that way. When someone's about to mug me, I'm like, just so you know, I'm a black belt in karate. And they're like, dude, I do not want to mess with you. No trouble. Sorry. I'll leave you alone.
You just pull up your shirt and you're wearing a black belt and they're like, oh, God.
I wear it everywhere I go. Yeah. Some people wear, brown belts or chain belts. I wear my black belt everywhere. But no, I did that for a long time and I really enjoyed it. I think that, and I mean, obviously other people may know this better than I do, but I feel like I'm someone who comes across as fairly confident and fairly sort of comfortable with themselves. And I do attribute a lot of that to karate. That's a lot about what they taught was sort of discipline and confidence and self-control and all of that. And so I do feel like it helped me a lot in that way. Let me see. I'm just kind of going all over the place. Badminton in middle and high school I was pretty good at, but there wasn't like a badminton team because that'd be ridiculous. So I don't know how useful that is, but I really liked badminton.
You just triggered all of our badminton fans.
Our professional badminton teams going around the country. Dude, that would be awesome. I would love to go see that. That'd be fun. Yeah, I mean, the only other thing that really comes to mind is like a few times here in Spokane, I think our team is called the Indians, the Spokane Indians. That sounds right. And growing up in elementary and middle school, I would have friends that would have like season passes or free tickets or whatever. And so maybe a couple times a year, someone would be like, hey, come to this game with me. And we'd go. And I always just remember being profoundly bored. And baseball games, like 3-4 hours, that's not uncommon for it to last a really long time. And so I was just like sitting there, just kind of, I guess how you were when T-ball, just wanting to do anything else, just being very, very bored. Everyone was very loud and excited around me, and I remember just being kind of annoyed, not because they were excited, just because I don't do well with noise. Yeah, so that was pretty much the extent of it. I ditched out on every pep rally, every football game, every single thing I could in high school. I didn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. So
maybe not so much for someone like you who doesn't do well with like loud noises or crowds, but like going to like an actual sports game, even if you're not really interested in the sport being played, there's an energy with the audience that's really cool. Unless it's soccer, because soccer is so boring. I went to a soccer game at the I can't even remember where it was. There's probably only one place it happens. It was in Seattle. I don't remember, but I was Safeco Field. That's baseball. I don't remember. It was a long time ago in high school. I was dragged there with friends, and it was just cold and long. It was cool to see the crowd freak out, but the game, like, it's 90 minutes, and like there's like nothing happening until like the your team gets a goal, and you blink and you miss it. And not a great memory. And sorry for soccer fans out there.
I'm just fact checking you real fast so that no one yells at us in the comments. Safeco Field is the Mariners baseball stadium in Seattle.
I knew it. I think it was I can't remember the name of the field.
No, it's totally fine. I just wanted to make sure that, we caught that before someone was like, I eat there every day and I work there and you're wrong.
I mean, call me out. I am wrong. I deserve it.
Yeah, I mean, kind of throwing back to last episode, I feel like the feeling a lot of people get going to sports games or watching sports or talking about sports with their friends and family is sort of the feeling we get going to superhero movies, where sort of everyone in the room is excited and has this energy about this one thing that's happening, and you can all kind of gather around and have this sense of sort of unity and just sort of camaraderie around this one thing that you're all really excited about. And so even if I don't personally feel that way about sports, I can understand the appeal of that, because it's nice to be around a bunch of people that are passionate and sharing your interests about this one thing. I think that's really cool.
That's something that I think a lot of people don't realize, that there's a strong similarity between the fandoms of like nerd culture based things like comic book movies and like science fiction movies and the like. There is a similarity between those fandoms and like, the kind of fandom that happens with like more jock type culture. Like right now, football season has started in earnest and people are really excited. And there's that like the same kind of like, appointment viewing that happens within a family that there would be for like a superhero movie that's coming out. And like that, it seems like two very different things and two very different groups of people, but like that kind of passion and that sort of almost obsession, I want to say, and that sort of energy within the people and the crowds of people and the like camaraderie that people get from that mutual interest, I think that's the same.
Yeah, it's sort of this ravenous interest kind of just, whether it's support for your team or support for the sport or whatever it is, it's just sort of this almost just undeniable passion of just, I'm going to go and I'm going to root for this team and I want them to win. And, if you like the opposing team, then screw you and here's why. But in a way that's not inherently evil or bad. That is kind of part of the experience of like, my team's the best, your team's the worst, so let's fight about it in a playful way. There's sort of this kind of built-in rivalry, I guess.
Yeah, sometimes though it's not always playful.
Yeah, sometimes they actually want to kill each other. Like when you get to like the Super Bowl and it's teams that maybe don't have a great history together.
Yeah, and that's when you hear the stories of the cities that like riot over like football wins or losses, or like the stories you hear out of like Europe during the big like European soccer games, where you'll hear stories of people who are actually like killing each other over like a soccer game. And it's crazy that the fandom with especially soccer, because soccer is one of those games that I personally find boring, but it's the most popular game around the world. Like it's pretty popular in America, but like in Europe it's even more. There's like a hardcore fandom.
For our European listeners, it is football.
Oh yeah, football. Yeah, for the European listeners we have, it's a huge margin of our audience.
Analytics, man, 87% of our listeners are from France. It's very strange. I don't know why. I don't want to offend too many people, but I do feel like I just, as a person, have about as much interest in the Super Bowl as I do in, those high school and middle school gym class, like soccer and football games. And that's just so bizarre to me when you hear about, the riots and people just freaking out and doing absolutely insane things because of the results of these matches. That's so foreign to me of someone could care that much about something that they are not directly involved in, and that's really what's more fascinating to me than anything is how passionate people get about sports, how like ride or die they are with teams where 99 times out of 100, they have never met anyone on this team. They do not know personally anyone who's associated with this team. It is this almost blind love and blind passion for a group of people that they don't even know. And I mean, of course, there's corollaries to that in non-sports things too, but that's always fascinating to me. I just feel like with sports, it just runs a little bit deeper and the fans are a little bit stronger about a lot of the things than, many other walks of life.
So many times I've heard people say things during the games that would imply that they're like a part of the team. Like when people when people ask how well the Seahawks are doing, they don't say how are the Seahawks doing. They say how are we doing, like as if like you participated. And I'll call out like my girlfriend or my mom when they say like how are we doing. And I'll be like, oh, I don't know how, like we're doing fine, but I don't know how the Seahawks are doing because we don't like have anything to do with them. And then I'll get like some flack for that, because I guess I'm not a true fan. But
for you and me, guys, I think you are obviously a little bit more into sports than I am, but on, grading on a curve, you and I probably not as interested in sports as the average person. Do you feel like, as we're starting to get older and our social circles are becoming a little bit more defined, do you feel like there's a certain sense of us being alienated there or us not being included because we're not super into these sports?
I don't necessarily feel like I don't think I've ever, or at least not in recent memory, be pushed out of conversations specifically because or at least within my friend groups, because I'm not super into sports. Like whenever someone's discussing a football team and the status of like players being traded, I may not understand what's going on, but I'll still like listen and try to participate in some way, shape, or form. I feel like when you get older, if you're not really like into a sports event, there's still a sense of like you having the opportunity to join in, not because of the sport itself, but because of like we were talking about before, the camaraderie and the friendship experience surrounded that. And I think maybe when you're younger, because kids are jerks, if you're not really into a certain sport, or if you're not into like a certain like video game or something, there's a little bit more pushback. Like if you're not into this, then you're not one of us, and therefore you can't hang out with us.
You're sort of only looking one level deep of like, if I like this thing, then I'll continue to do it and I'll continue to engage with it. And if I don't, I have absolutely no interest in it. And there's no consideration as a kid for what the people around you like, what the people around you are feeling or thinking and all of that. It is just whether or not you like something, and that is the end all be all.
Exactly. It's almost as if kids are selfish and jerks.
It's crazy. And then you grow up to be an adult and all of that just instantly goes away. It's like magic. You're just this completely selfless, wonderful, amazing person. It's great.
That's the experience. Yeah.
That's how it works. Not yet adults every Monday and Friday. Yeah. I mean, I feel like you're right for the most part. I do want to throw kind of a caveat in there. And that is, I feel like as you get older and you're less ashamed and a little bit more comfortable with your personality and the way you come across to certain people, you often attract people that are similar to you. And I mean that in friendships and relationships and business settings and all of these things, often people that are similar are drawn to each other. And so I feel like if you're someone who's not particularly interested in sports or doesn't necessarily have that much passion for that, you're probably surrounding yourself with a lot of people who, for one reason or another, feel similarly. And so like I personally, in my friend groups, sports, it's not that my friends don't like sports. It's just that that's not a huge thing. That's not a defining kind of pillar in our friendships. And so I don't really feel alienated in my group of friends now, just because I don't talk with them about sports ever. I do remember a few times growing up that it was very much like my group of friends in elementary or middle school or whatever, that we all got along, we'd all have a good time, we'd all play video games together, and sooner or later the conversation would get to football. And I just kind of felt like I was like the odd one out, I kind of felt like I was the one guy there who was just kind of laughing a little bit too much and nodding a little bit too much because he didn't really have any idea what was going on. And sooner or later, I feel like you just kind of have to hit a point where you have to ask yourself, do I want to pretend to fit in, or do I just want to be happy the people around me are happy? And I think that's kind of where I come down on sports most of the time is, hey, I don't really get this, but I get that you're having a good time and I'm happy for you because of that.
It's a really beautiful and, dare I say, selfless way of looking at it, Colin.
Oh, well, thanks, Eric. I appreciate that. That's very, very nice of you to say.
It's almost as if we are adults.
We graduated.
End of podcast.
Just because we're kind of ending on an open note, I just kind of want to speculate for a second here. What happens to this podcast when we become adults? Like, do we hit a point where we do the sequel show, Finally Adults, or what?
I don't know if we'll ever feel. I don't know if I'll ever feel like an adult.
That's fair. I don't know. Give it a year. It'll be interesting to see how this grows and changes.
Maybe when I have grandkids, I'll probably be like, maybe I'm an adult.
after 6,000 episodes, and we're like, okay, we should probably end this. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting as, hopefully within the next year, you and I have some big moments in our lives, hopefully move out and, get real jobs and stuff like that. It will be interesting to see how this podcast kind of grows and changes as we get through that stuff. But for now, we're just kind of addressing the long backlog of stuff that's happened to us up until this point.
In fact, to tease some things I have regarding potential future life changes, and this might even be the topic of the next episode. Here's a tease. I have some things coming up that have some potential. And now I'm being super vague, and I probably shouldn't have been this vague, but I don't want to overhype it, and I don't want to mention it because then I want a little tease for the next episode.
Shocking bombshell, Eric's pregnant. You heard it here first.
That too, but that's not what I was talking about.
There was, I think it was on like Good Morning America or something. This is probably 10, 15 years ago. This guy had a uterus surgically implanted into himself, and he got pregnant. Do you remember this?
I remember that. I think I watched a story on the Daily Show with Jon Stewart. Is that the first and maybe only pregnant man?
That's crazy, man. What a world we live in. It's insane.
It's beautiful.
Eric, for the one person out there who wants this to be nicely tied up with a bow and sent off on its merry way, what's kind of your takeaway from sports? Not just as a kid, but as, soon to be adults, and as we've grown up with sports and our relationship with it has changed over time. What's kind of the one pin you want to put in this thing?
Oh God, you always put so much pressure on me when you're like, "Hey, Eric, let's have a nice little resolution to this."
We got to hit a home run, Eric. We're on the home base, and the plates are loaded, and Babe Ruth is sitting there giving us a thought. I don't know. I'm way out of my wheelhouse here.
Great sports references. Here's my takeaway from this: if you like sports, play ball.
That's good. That's like in baseball when they say play ball.
It's funny how we call this a sports episode, and we just talked about football and baseball and how soccer sucks.
That's the only sports, right? I'm pretty sure that's just the...
You mentioned badminton a little bit.
Badminton, I'm going to say it, underrated sport. I'm happy for the NFL and the NHL and the NBA and all of these. I'm happy for all of these three-letter organizations, but I do have to wonder, why do we not have a national badminton association or league or something? I feel like that's a highly underrated sport. And frankly, it's the only sport that in my life I'll ever have a chance at going professional at. So,
and while we're at it, why isn't there a national pickleball tournament or sport? Because pickleball is the only sport where I think I have a chance. And sometimes I do play it and I do well.
Make it happen, Mr. Sports. I don't know where you are, but
perfect balance between tennis and ping pong, I think.
It really is. Except when you say to a professional ping pong player that the game is called ping pong, they get very mad at you. Apparently, it's supposed to be called table tennis.
Yeah, that's the correct term, but that's also dumb, and I don't like it.
Yeah, I don't know why that would offend people, but I don't know. If people called what we're doing internet radio, I guess I would get offended. It's clearly podcasting, so.
I would think that would make us sound more legit than podcasting. Internet radio, that sounds like a thing, whereas podcasts, like, oh, anyone can have a podcast.
Not like we do it, though, Eric. This is the most premier show on the internet.
It's like saying internet television versus YouTube. Not to trigger you because you're a YouTuber, but I feel like if you say, oh, I do internet television, that may sound like a little more legit than be like, oh, I'm a YouTuber. Then it's like, oh.
I don't know. If I hear internet television, I'll be like, all right, see you in 2 years when you're looking for a job. Because, I feel like anything that's called itself internet television probably isn't going to be around to stay. But maybe that's just me being jaded. Anyways. Well, folks, this has been a very meandering and off-the-wall episode of the Not Yet Adults podcast. But I think Eric kind of hit the nose on the head. If you like sports, great. If not, that's okay too. But, as we kind of touched on, try to be happy for your friends that are into sports if you're not, or vice versa. It's everybody has different interests, and that's okay. But don't be that guy at the Super Bowl party that's like, all right, sports ball, here we go, everybody. Just... Don't rob them of their fun because they're enjoying it.
Yeah, that's a good way to get kicked out of that party.
It really is. If you have to be that guy, just don't go. Just stay home and do anything else. Well, folks, this has been episode 14 of the Not Yet Adults podcast. Remember that this podcast comes to you every Monday and Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific time on YouTube, SoundCloud, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, and all other podcast services. We're also across the social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Not Yet Adults. We also have our own subreddit at r/NotYetAdults, which is pretty darn cool. If you could do us one favor, because we both talked about sports for 30 minutes and we have no idea. So we're throwing a bone out there. Take a second out of your day, rate us on Apple Podcasts and or iTunes, whichever you use. If you're on iOS, it really helps us a lot and helps the podcast get listened to by more people, which, if we do say so ourselves, is pretty darn helpful.
That we'd really appreciate it. I'd be a happy boy.
I'd be a happy boy too. We'd be a couple of happy boys here. So, your work's cut out for you, but we sure would appreciate it. Alrighty, folks. Well, we'll be back this Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific time talking about something new, and we couldn't look forward to it more. So thanks for listening. Thanks for checking us out. And until next time, this has been Not Yet Adults.
Home run, goal. Sport.